offices are located in there. Really.
So, everybody, we're going to interrupt the broadcast because at this point, we're going to keep it up on the screen. I want to see if they're going to vote at 10. From what I understand, at 10 o'clock, they have to vote to continue the meeting or not. So right now, I'm just curious if they're going to vote. So we're going to leave the meeting up. We were curious about some of the comments at the end, but as we said, it's getting late. I've been going 3.5 hours. Brandi's been here with me, so we're going to get into the after show because the main point of discussion is, of course, the vote. But in a meeting where we saw people get removed, people get told to kill themselves, that's going to get us a strike on YouTube. It was a meeting full of fireworks. So. Where do you guys? I'd like to start by saying that they did vote on the boys and girls sports. They voted in favor of that. All of the liberals, except for who was it? What's her name? Tierney?
Abigail Tierney.
Yeah. She voted no, but she's also not running again, so she can stand on her hill and die, and it doesn't matter because she's not going to get reelected anyway. It was 8-1, but all of the liberals all had to say something about it first before they voted yes. They all had a 10-minute speech. It seemed like it was 10 minutes. And each one of them had to say, well, I'm going to vote for this, but, and however. If ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas.
But you have to see something, Jonathan. Okay. For example, Brian Geiswhite. He's been trying to defeat Sandra, and he's trying to prove to people that he's a conservative, right? However, he's being his campaign is being funded by Democratic parties like West Shore Unify, West Shore Student First. These are progressive, organizations that are endorsing him, and he's running on their. If you look at their website, he's running as one. They put our candidates. He's running on their bill. So. Beating Sandra is going to be difficult because people know that Sandra is a true conservative. Sandra did not, crossfile, but he's trying to make people believe, that he's a conservative. But yet, if you listen to what he said, well, we need to revisit this because we need to make sure that our boys are protected. I don't know what part of this he's not getting. Title IX was made to protect women in women's sports. It has nothing to do with men.
Yep.
Okay. But he's trying to still sabotage in his way.
Yes, absolutely. I can't tell you what just wait over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Just stay tuned to the Boiling Point podcast. This meeting is going to be gold. Okay. Because we got to see a lot of people showed their colors in this meeting, and I don't know if they weren't aware of what they were doing or if it just happened, but we got to see a lot in this meeting. Okay. Geiswhite included. I couldn't believe some of the things that he said.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe the amount of people that voted no on the budget.
Yeah.
Well, there's a big fight with the budget.
What?
There's a big fight with the budget. Okay. Yeah. Because a lot of people don't want that budget to pass.
They did. Yeah. They voted 8-1 in favor of that too. Or no, how many was it? It wasn't 8-1. It was, there was, 5-3.
6-3.
6-3. I apologize. There's 9. And yeah, the budget, as the one guy said, I'm glad you brought that up because the one guy at the beginning in the first comments at the beginning of the night said, oh crap, I paused this. I didn't mute it. I'm sorry. Let me fix this. My goodness. I meant to mute it, not pause it. So there we go. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. At least now, if it comes up, if the comments come up, we can go back to the meeting if we want to hear some of the closing comments. The guy at the beginning said the numbers weren't adding up on the budget. When they had them up on the screen, I messaged to Brandi. I said that doesn't look right. Like I've seen the budget. I saw a copy of the budget last year, and that's not even close. Like, how do you get the numbers that I looked at and the numbers that you got there? You did not get that all from a tax hike. So
no. Correct.
The numbers, I think, somewhere.
And they aren't,
Correct.
in my opinion, they aren't trying hard enough if they really can't see the writing on the wall as to why parents are pulling their kids out of the district.
I think they see
that-
the writing on the wall, Brandi. I think that they don't want to admit it.
My case alone, what they tried pulling with Caden,
it's
is a prime
ridiculous.
example of why some of these parents are pulling their kids out of the district.
And yes, Sandra even said that if the policy too, that they were likely going to lose more people. Like it's their policies that they're implementing that are
And the
causing
policies
parents to
that they
take their
have
kids
that
out
they
of
don't
school.
follow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was
I
happy
do-
that Sandra said it. I was happy that Sandra said it because somebody has to say it. You see, there's a lot of conservative parents out there that we're going to have an issue with this. That we're going to have an
came
issue
out
if
and
they
forced.
pass.
They came out in force tonight, Mariana. I was impressed by that. How many different conservatives got up and spoke. That was really great to see.
And that's only a portion of the number of people that actually came out to vote them in. And then on the day that they were sworn in, that place was mob. I mean, from corner to corner with conservatives. Okay, so Sandra is right. You know, she knocks on these doors, especially in her region, and she listens to what the people are saying. And this thing with boys and women's sports was a big issue. And parents were saying, if they, you know, do not protect the girls, we're pulling our kids out. Then the next big battle is going to be those transgender bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's going to be a battle.
Yeah, I'm glad that they voted that in. Of course, yeah, the bathroom policy is something different. That's a whole different thing. But at least we got the sports done. You know, at least that was done. And how about, I mean, everybody painting the brush with the broad brush of excluding all these kids, excluding. It's not about exclusion at all. Actually, it's just about having people compete with who they're meant to compete against. Not about excluding anybody. So it's ridiculous to.
I actually just think I don't know if I shared it in the chat group or not. I found a video yesterday of a male that is a pitcher in softball.
Oh.
And the stats on it are wild. I'll have to share it to you so you can see it. But it was wild. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. The stats are crazy. That's what people don't. All you have to do is go look, especially running and swimming. That really tells the story because that's really where you can measure up the numbers and use science and compare numbers to numbers in swimming and in running, especially.
The guy that spoke, Chris Campelsi, I think is his name, or Campelisi. If I'm killing your name, Chris, I'm sorry. But anyway, he bought some stats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh man, when he brought that up, I was like, oh man, I was, because I had the, I was obviously off screen and stuff, but I was like, I was cheering. I was like, yes, finally somebody coming with stats and numbers. I was like, that's exactly right. Because I had my episode up, episode 88, where we give all those stats, and I'm so glad someone actually showed up there with numbers and stats because nobody else from the other side had information like that. It was all, oh, why are we excluding people? We want an all-inclusive. And then up comes next side, and we got stats. We got numbers that say why this isn't okay. So
correct. And
I
it's
love
not okay.
that.
It's like, okay, everybody that knows Casey, okay, because Casey, he grew up in this area. They knew that he played football in Cedar Cliff. Okay, he was known to be really good. So that's like me. Maybe we need to do a visual for these people to get it. That's like me trying to, go against Casey in football. How well is that gonna go? All he has to do is hold me like this, and I'm not going anywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, isn't that who was that? Who was that brought that up? Geist White, right? How he wanted it to be what?
Britton brought up how in
Britton. Okay, David Britton.
Midget football, he played center and he was across from a girl, and he's like, it was weird.
Yeah, no, who was saying about the who wanted the policy, wanted to go back to policy so that they could make it about women in men's sports too? Was that Geist White?
Yeah,
that was Brian Geist White. Yeah,
it was Geist White. So there's a reason, and because there's a reason that why that doesn't matter as much. Okay, it comes right back to the same numbers. You can't, because a woman competing against a boy isn't even gonna come close.
What about the boys? This policy don't mention the boys, but then create a policy just for boys. But this has nothing to do with Title IX. Okay.
And then they'll be mad because there's another policy.
Exactly. I mean, it's stupid. Do we need all these policies? No, Title IX was made to protect women. I mean, when Title IX came out, I was in elementary school. Okay. That was made to protect women's sports. Okay, women's sports. So why he's even putting the boys? The boys is not a factor here. The boys will play in their sports, okay? And if you want another policy, well, if little Johnny bang his head up against the wall, we got to take him to 18 different doctors, whatever. Then write the policy. You know what I'm saying? But leave Title IX alone. Title IX is for women.
And I would also like to say that women competing against boys, like if a woman wants to compete against the boys, especially at least in a non-contact sport, then they can. They're allowed. You should be allowed to, if a woman wants to compete against the boys, let them. I don't have a problem with that. But the point is that they should have the choice. They shouldn't be forced to compete against boys. If they want to compete against boys, let them compete against boys. Who, you know what I mean? What's that? That's not going to hurt anybody if that's what the student wants, right? As long as they have their own changing room and locker room, of course. But it's different because men are stronger men are stronger than girls, women. That's just the way it is. So when it comes to
arm
sports,
span is different. Like it's
everything that we have different genetics. We have different chromosomes. There's a reason God created. I said this earlier, Brandi, before the episode or before the meeting started, that God created us differently for reasons. You may not like it, but that's the way it is.
Right.
Now, I do want to take a moment real quick, and I want to give a special shout out to one of our new biggest fans. Thank you for the shout out tonight, Adam Trone. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you watching, buddy. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate it very much. Please feel free to leave a comment sometime. We'd love to hear from you. So I just wanted to take a moment.
And on the floor, I'll have you know, on the floor, because Casey and I got there pretty early. So we saw when the clown circus came in, right? And they were like, that's the church podcaster.
Oh, yeah?
And then they were talking, she's from that despicable podcast. Yeah, that podcast. And everything was about the podcast, okay? So the thing is now the podcast. We got to go after the podcast, So, so they are watching. Okay.
Yes, they are
like
watching.
The truths that are coming out,
And anytime they say the podcast in the room, in the meetings, it is the Boiling Point podcast that they are referring to. Okay. There's no doubt. That's just the way it is, because we're also the only ones talking about it and the only ones covering it. So there can't be another podcast that they're talking about because no one else is doing it. Only us. So yes, of course, we did see some of our biggest fans did speak before. One or two of them did speak before the actual meeting began. It looks like they're finished with the slides, but we're going to leave them muted for now, at least until they get to some comments, if we want to listen to the comments at the end. But yes, I do want to appreciate Adam Trone giving us a shout out. All you have to do is just drop our name once. That would really be great. All these guys are smart enough to watch along, but not actually drop our name. So it'd be nice if they just accidentally slipped once. Oh, the Boiling Point the podcasters. It'd just be nice if it just slipped out of their mouth once. So,
well, I think what I need to do, I need to make a pink shirt, and in the back, I like pink. So I'm gonna tell you right now, you gotta have a pink shirt in the store. So that being stated, I need a pink shirt that says the Boiling Point in the back. So when I go and speak to these things, okay, my hair is short, they're gonna see, and maybe the Boiling Point, the church podcaster.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get you your own shirt. We're doing that. That's the way it is. Yeah. I want to get more parents wearing our gear to the meeting. That would really be ideal. As I said I think it was you and Casey or somebody. I was like, I would really like if all the parents who were like on the side of the Boiling Point podcast to show up one meeting, all wearing the Boiling Point podcast gear. I think that would, also make a statement. By the same comparison though, Marianne, I would have loved to have seen more of the moms in Moms for Liberty apparel as well.
Well, I had my Moms for Liberty shirt on today, and I did this in honor of Adam Trone. Remember, because
another shout out to Adam Trone.
Did you notice he could barely look up? Like he literally sat. It literally looked like he was sleeping at one point. I don't think he was.
No. I'll tell you what happened there. They came out of the executive meeting, right? They must have had a heck of an executive meeting. You know how sometimes they argue back then, all this stuff. So when he came out, he was like this, and he was like this for the longest. Okay, at where he sits. Okay, and they all came out looking angry, like they all sucked lemons. So God only knows what happened back there. Okay, but it had to do with whatever happened in that executive meeting, because every single one of them looked like they were ready to fight.
There had to have been enough people there had to have been enough people in the meeting saying that they were voting for yes tonight. There had to have been at least a firm 5 that said that they were voting for it tonight to get the other ones to go along.
I wonder how many parents emailed about the bribery issue.
Oh man,
I don't know because right, and that's probably it because I know that West Shore Parents United
did, and it wasn't brought up when he.
Oh no, they're talking about that behind an executive session. Okay,
unless they're going to bring it up in the general, because I have 2. I have the issue with Caden, and I have the other part of the email, which didn't have to do with business items. It was about the bribery.
So I wonder.
He mentioned your name and Oliver's name, but he did not mention.
And that was about in favor of the policy because that was a business item.
Right.
So I want.
That's why you want to hear that. Okay, that's why you want to hear it at the end to see. Okay, so when they get to that, we'll switch back over and listen in on that when they get to that point. They are after 10 o'clock.
Yeah, this is normal.
It didn't look like they had a motion to continue the meeting to me. I mean, we're not listening in at the moment, but we do have it up on the screen. It didn't look like they had an official vote. It looks like they're just continuing on with the conversation of the building committee. So that's interesting. We'll have to also check into that and find out if there's actually a policy on how long the meeting goes.
A tactic that administration has used before is that if they don't want to go into, let's say, the general comments or whatever, they will extend that meeting, okay, for the longest, hoping that people are gonna, go or whatever, or they can, do a vote or whatever. I'm not saying our staff administration, because there was many times that Brian Geisler, when he was president, he did it. If he saw that there was a parent waiting to talk, and there was a parent, let's say like Casey, that he didn't want to hear, they will sit there and talk about a taco or a lollipop or a balloon for 3 hours in order to see if they would dissuade the people to leave. I don't blame her. She got to work. If she is, I don't blame her.
Yeah, she might have been waiting for the final comments at the end to speak again, but she might not be able to wait. Which is, as you've said, that's a tactic that they used before. How about the commenters at the beginning? Like the conservative side really came out tonight, and I was really happy about that. It was like a 3-to-1 ratio. It was like a 3-to-1 ratio on the speakers at the beginning of the meeting. And I would also want to say, because we didn't get a lot of liberals, I wonder how many liberals are trying to wait and are going to comment at the end, or because they all walked outside, or is nobody going to come back in to do their comments? I wonder.
Well, no, they probably are, because after the vote and everything, or a little before the vote, because we had like a bathroom break, Casey goes, look, I go, what? And some people were coming in after. And I think that they want to comment on the general comments. And don't be surprised if in that general comment, they talk about that podcast, because Marty Burt was there. She hates the podcast, and some other people were there talking about that podcast. And don't be surprised. Don't be surprised even this general comment.
That's okay. This is a night of shout outs. I'll be happy to give some more people some shout outs later. We already gave one to Adam Trone. Did anybody else mention this yet?
And what you call it, Adam Trong, just be careful of him, because Adam Trong is not on our side. He's a snake.
Look at him now. Look how.
Oh no, I know. Oh, I know. I'm Mariana. I mean, I know he's not on our side, but that's why I like calling him my number one fan and acknowledging the shout outs, because
maybe we should send him a shirt.
Absolutely, that's a great idea.
You should send him a shirt.
We should. We'll customize it for him too. We'll just put number one fan on the front, and then the boiling point. You know what? We'll even put the American cross on the back for him.
There you go. Now you're talking.
Yeah, how he's sitting now is how he has sat most of the entire meeting.
Yes, and that's how he came out of executive session. And then when he said yes to the policy, some of the people in the left walked out. Okay, Terry Mickle got really upset, and she just had to go out for some air there for a minute.
Oh, Terry Mickle.
Somebody yelled, "Thanks a lot, Adam." I was like, "Wow!" They went after him verbally.
So what all happened with Casey? Because what happened at the beginning there when?
Yeah, we did hear somebody yell. There was there was something. Okay, there was something when he sat down, and then there was something right after he started. There was two interruptions.
So the first interruption was this: the Alphabet Jihad that were there. Okay, they were not. I'm gonna tell you right now, they were not from our community. Okay, some were The other half was not. Now, they didn't come out as much as we were anticipating. They were more conservative this time than Alphabet Jihad. So there was this guy, okay, I guess he identifies as a girl with little, ponytails up here and little fairy
Yeah.
things and whatever. And they bought signs.
Yeah, I
Okay.
saw that.
So
We
they
commented.
sat, yes, they sat next to or across Bill Gramlich, and they had a sign that said the GOP is a terrorist group, stuff like that. So when Chris Capelsi, the one that was giving the stats on the sports, was speaking, he was making noise in the back. Okay. And Mandy said to Chris, she said to Chris, the
Right.
guy that was speaking, sir. But the guy, Alphabet
Yeah.
Jihad back there thought that they were talking to him. It's ma'am. I'm not a sir. It's
Yeah.
ma'am. And she's like,
Yep.
well, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to this sir. Then he just continued. Right? He continued. So he got up and he was yelling back at
Well,
Mandy.
she
and
did
Mandy
ask
said,
him to remove the sign.
and he wouldn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So we
And
had
then she
people
had
dressed. We had people dressed like fairies today. Okay, all sorts of colors on. We had this guy with a little thinking that he was a woman, and when that Mandy said enough, she's like, security, escort him out. So when they're escorting him out, he's like, you need to die, go f yourself and die, and he walked out.
wow.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. See,
Security
there
escorted
you
him
go.
out.
That's a perfect example of the differences in sides. Did anybody from our side yell at the other side to die? No.
No.
And as I've said
And
before,
Christy
none of
said
this,
that. Yeah, Christy in her comments said it.
yeah, none of this has to
Christy
do with
said
it's not about hate. We want them to get the right kind of help, not hate.
They're
It's not
doing
about
public
hate.
comment.
Okay, let's bring him back up.
Because you got to listen to these nuts. You know that.
You gotta say it.
I'm sorry, I gotta find it.
This will be.
This will be considered. And what he said. Thank you.
Okay. It's 7-0 because we're down 2.
Oh, we're down 2.
We are down. So
Kelly's
it'll be
off
1,
and
2,
Heidi
3,
left.
4, 5.
Heidi left?
7.
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah, looks like it.
May I move into public comment, Madam
Let's
Chair?
please do that.
People
Do we
gotta
have any
work.
Student comments.
We have no student comments. We have some electronic comments, so I'll start with them.
Okay, let's listen to these.
Joey Askey shared perspectives on the use of technology in the classroom and the home. Brandi and Oliver Brandel expressed concern about a lack of accommodations initially provided for their son to attend graduation and concern about actions by a board member trying to bribe another board member.
Oh,
Mariana Reed for West Shore Parents United
He
expressed
actually
concern
mentioned it.
related to transparent and ethical governance based on a text message sent from one board member to another and asked for a formal review of the incident. A copy of the text message was provided. Those are the electronically submitted comments that were shared with the board in advance.
Okay.
Mr. Forgot didn't forget tonight.
Absolutely. How about that?
5 of the 7 were still in the room.
How about that?
Okay. So public
Well,
comment,
I
you guys
think
have
I
the
think
duty for
I think
community
Mr.
members to
Forgot
share
got
their
upset
insight
that
and
we,
feedback with
called
the
him
board.
Mr. Forgot,
Each
and this time
speaker
he
is
mentioned it.
allocated 4 minutes to present their remarks, and the board will listen to all
All right,
comments.
Brandi, is that what you wanted to hear, or do you guys want to
Yeah.
listen to some of these public
At which
comments?
time the superintendent
No,
may
I'm okay. I
be
mean, unless
provided
somebody
for
else wants to
purposes of
listen. I just wanted to make sure he mentioned it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna mute this up. We can always unmute it. I'm gonna leave it up on the screen. We can always unmute it if we want. How about that? I want to talk about that right now, Brandi. That first of all, thank you for writing that email, because I never even considered trying to have somebody send an email to the board to have it even recognized in a school board meeting. So that was phenomenal thinking.
Isn't this guy an attorney? Mariana. Isn't this guy an attorney?
Yes, that's Marvin Bayshore. That's Marvin Bayshore.
You
He's the
paused
one that
it.
been trying to get the deposition papers.
4-letter word. Thank you, Brandi.
Right to know request for depositions from the Sunshine Act.
Why aren't they
litigation.
providing the
I received a
depositions?
letter last week from Dr.
Because-
Hargott denying my right to know request for the depositions of the board.
Because
members.
it hasn't gone
The
to
denial
court yet.
letter
They
stated
cannot
that
give the
Okay.
deposition nor the
deposition
testimony.
transcripts are in the possession of the district's special legal counsel for the Sunshine Act litigation. Unquote. Then it went on to quote Rule 1.6, the rules of professional conduct for lawyers, which provides that lawyers shall not disclose certain client information unless the client consents to the disclosure. So
Is this
without
about our-
expressly saying so in so many words,
Yeah, he wants the
denial letter
depositions
from
from
the
the Sunshine
district,
Act
the
case.
board is not consenting
And
to
I
make
think he's
public
going to be
the
surprised when he finally does
depositions
get
and
it.
has so instructed its legal counsel. What's critical to understand is what the letter does not state. The depositions are the property of the district, not the property of legal counsel. Legal counsel is hired by the district, takes orders from the district. Obviously, legal counsel will not and should not disclose client information when the client instructs them not to.
This is about
The
ours,
keys are in the hands of the client, not the counsel.
about our
The
report.
bottom line of my right to know request is that the depositions are not going to be disclosed because a majority of this board doesn't want the public to have access
The
to it.
information that
One
we
majority
disclose has nothing to do with the deposition. That's
not
a
want the public
whole
to know
Oh, you're right.
separate
That's
set
true.
of papers.
their
Has nothing to
deposition
do with the
testimony
deposition.
under oath was. The board is hiding behind the ethical rule upon attorneys.
The board is
but
not
the
hiding. They
reason the
cannot
depositions are not
disclose that.
disclosed by legal counsel is strictly because the board majority has refused to consent to their disclosure. The public has to wonder, what is the board hiding? In particular, it has to wonder, what is the board president, who's no longer at the meeting, unfortunately, running for re-election, hiding from the voters in this election?
Okay, well, let's address that right quick. And then if we need to unmute again, we'll unmute again. Oh, Brandi in the back of my head there reminding me that I hit the pause button. That's why I just didn't hit the pause button right there. So this guy was talking, tell me I still hit the pause button.
No.
No, okay. Just we
Oh
had
my
that
God, see
woman,
movement.
the one body we have in the frame doesn't look like it's
Yeah, man.
moving. So I was like,
But the shadows were.
yeah. So
Oh, it's this guy again. He
Oh, do
has
you
the
wanna hear?
text messages.
oh, that
Oh,
time I did hit the pause.
And these legal battle that was just addressed by the last person, I have sat here and watched my wife be referred to as very disreputable things.
Wow.
I have watched my wife cry over this, and I have watched
Who's his
a lot
wife?
of accusations
Mandy
being
Davis.
thrown around.
Oh,
But like what was alluded to in some of the electronic communications, when you say, I do not want to bring the rest up in writing, but let's say
Oh,
we agree tabling, it ends with
they're
you
using
as
our thing,
president should you
Mariana.
want it. One member of a 9-person board cannot make that bribe without at least 4 other votes.
like I said, unless he had a mouse in his pocket.
Y'all are getting
Who
on
was
that
the
about
we?
sunshine, and it's happening. I think that bribing elected officials is illegal. I'm not saying I want this board to do anything about that. I'm just pointing out what's actually going on. So I'm glad that you guys are pushing for this lawsuit to go all the way, because it's going to show what a waste of time it has actually been. But now at least we already know the character of at least one other person on the board. And I think the character of the ones getting sued will be shown at the end of this lawsuit. But as a husband, it's been very difficult.
Good job.
That was excellent.
Julie Estep.
That was excellent. I believe that was Mandy Davis's husband. And I want to say Mandy Davis chaired the hell out of this meeting tonight.
Yes,
The
she
way
did.
she kept
And
control over the
John,
meeting
is
and
it
removed
Devon?
people that were interrupting. It's been a hell of a meeting. Casey there joining us next to Mariana. Casey, you did a hell of a job too, man. Yeah, you did a hell of a job too.
Mr. Dewan, you've been here before.
I have.
This
Yeah.
is-
How about
This is your
that?
third
How about
time?
that?
Third
Oh my.
time. Yeah, you're keeping score.
I actually just read what you're going to be speaking about, and I know, yes, this is your third time.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I came and raised the issue of disruptive students parking in our neighborhood, speeding, playing loud music, spinning their tires, things like that. And since that time, my wife and I have gone through a lot of steps to see what we could do. Because when I first came here and raised the issue, the solicitor at the time says, "Oh, we can't tell kids where to park." And I said, "Okay, well, now the school board can't do anything about it. We'll have to go through the township." We went all those routes, permit parking in our neighborhood. They dismissed us out of hand. You know, so that's fine. I'm not going to fight City Hall on that one. At the most recent homeowners association meeting, and we reside here just adjacent to Redland Senior High School. And at our homeowners association meeting, I was asked to speak about this issue because everybody's concerned about it in the neighborhood, mostly because of speeding. And there are lots of small children, 3 o'clock, whatever, school lets out, these guys tear out of here. There's people, kids in the neighborhood or whatever. And, one girl's blind. So I'm not saying, that she's going to be hurt or anything like that, but they're very alarmed by it. And I went and spoke and I said, da, 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 da. This is what I've done. This is what I've researched. And someone at the meeting had said, well, they can dictate student parking issues. And they raised the issue of Dallastown School District. And I didn't know if he was accurate or not. So I looked it up, and Dallastown Area School District has, and I'll read from this, a very comprehensive policy regulating student parking on school premises. Driving to school and parking on campus is considered a privilege and not a right, and is subject to specific rules and limitations. It goes down the line talking about a lot of different things, but it says prohibition of off-campus parking. Students are not permitted to park on adjacent neighborhood streets under any circumstances.
All right. I don't
And then,
know
of
if
course,
we.
at the
Do
very
you
end,
want to
it
guys
talks
want to
about
keep
the
this?
discipline, that if repeated.
It's not really a hot button issue.
No, I mean it's it's important, and he's obviously been dealing with it for a few years. But
Yeah.
we especially specifically me and Brandi, and of course Mariana and Casey. We've all been going for a long time right now. So I don't know about you, but I'm tired, and it's time for us to reach the end of our broadcast to at least maybe coincide with the end of this meeting. So. I think he's done speaking anyway. So if Brandi, if you see, or Casey, you guys see anybody else that comes up that we need to hear from, make sure you let me know. We'll put it right back on.
Sure. Yeah. And I also want to make a comment on something I heard discussed, because I was, finally eating my breakfast about 20 minutes ago while you guys were on with just Mariana. But Geiswhite bringing up nothing to protect the boys. All right. Now that's not even a thing, because that's like saying, okay, if we're going to get, like, say, for example, there was a movement to get rid of the common sense policy, which would be every bit as absurd, as no more absurd than what we have right now with this transgender nonsense, to have allow varsity age seniors, senior students to play in freshman sports. Okay. And then somebody made a policy saying, well, no, we're going to go back to common sense now. Seniors cannot compete in ninth grade sports, but talented freshmen, as they've always been allowed to do if they so choose, can bump up and play varsity sports. That's the same thing with the boys and girls. The girls have always been able to compete in boys sports for the most part if they wanted to, because they're not going to a higher level of competition. For the same reason a wrestler can wrestle out of his weight class if he's wrestling up, but he can't wrestle down. It always works one way when you're competing in a higher level of competition than your own natural designation rather than lower. So the absurdity of making that argument, we got to protect the boys too, that's not necessary. Sorry.
No. If I could. Oh, Sandra's, hold on. Sandra's talking. We'll unmute her and see what she has to say quick.
Mm-hmm.
Disagree with Mr. Davis on one point. He said we know the conduct by those text messages of one of our board members. We actually know the conduct and character of two.
Yes.
The one on the receiving end of that text who did not bite at the bit, who it might have been advantageous for that person presented with that opportunity to bite at that bit, to take the easy way out. But that director did not. And I think it is incredible character that that opportunity was seen for what it was immediately. I want to commend you guys for this long evening. And I'll tell you, you guys really put hard work in, the ones I agree with and the ones I don't. You guys put a lot into this. And I just think you guys ought to be commended for that.
Well,
Thank
Sandra, you better get ready. Oh, Danielle's coming back. Good Lord.
All right, well, we'll listen to her.
I'll try to be quick. Since it keeps coming up, I just want to note to people at home who might not have any idea what some folks are mentioning. Someone leaked some materials from the deposition.
Here we
of
go.
the Sunshine Act, and I certainly couldn't point any fingers, but it
You point
does
at me.
not benefit anyone other than the folks who are being sued from leaking those materials. So somehow it got released from someone.
Anonymously.
Secondly, I wish Mrs. Thomas hadn't left, because my first comment is directed specifically at her.
You're not allowed to direct
reading that
to-
whole email.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do
and
that.
Her discussion sets a poor precedence for the board. I'm certain that there are several people who sent in electronic comments today whose emails were summarized rather than read out loud, who would have liked to have the
Welcome
same
to our world.
opportunity that Mr.
Yeah, anyway.
Email.
What is she?
got
She's
to
complaining
be
about what
heard
happened to
by
the
community.
other side all the
That is something
time.
that, I don't know that any of us want to go back to the days of reading every email in its entirety, but I think that sets a poor precedence and procedure by the
It's
board.
always been said. What are you talking
On
about?
to positive things. This week it was School Nurse Appreciation Day. It was School Nurse Appreciation Day yesterday, and I'm going to be vague because, my kid deserves some privacy, but there was an issue with one of my children, and the information that the school nurse gave us was very helpful in obtaining a diagnosis with their physician. So I want to give a shout out to our school nurses. They do so much more than provide Band-Aids.
All right.
and
Well, she
cold
covered the
packs.
main thing now. It's unlikely we
And
want
they
to hear
have a
anything
very
else
complicated job.
she has to say.
Again,
You guys,
all
do you guys
about
concur? Do you want to leave it on?
Yeah, we're good.
No.
Intense needs.
All right. Then we're going to cut her off. We're going to leave it up on the screen just in case anybody else comes up. I'll be honest with you, Brandi and Casey. When Mariana first broke this, and then she had the follow-up because he admitted to it in a statement, as we've gone over. And then I did a follow-up on Sunday, recapping all of the information that we had. And then, of course, we had the episode on Monday. I was surprised that more things weren't happening, to be quite honest, at first. But this meeting, I can't believe how it's like it really rippled. Like it's out there. Everybody knows about it. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. Our report, Mariana's report, did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Well, there's
Amen to
a
that.
post on the Families of West Shore School District about the upcoming election, and it was brought up in there. And some of the the gender neutral bathrooms at Redland, and some of the stuff that these people were saying, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like they seriously, they have an issue. They weren't my pictures to begin with, but somebody asked for proof. So I posted the pictures of the signs outside the bathroom. And they literally said that they're a little concerned with the fact that an adult is, spying on children's bathrooms.
Oh, yeah. I remember when that came up.
If, their concern is if I would be checking what's in their pants.
Well, they just adjourned the meeting. I think that's ridiculous. I was
like, what?
Where are we now? Hold on. I'm sorry. A few technical issues there. That's all. Yeah, that's ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous. That even from your pictures, like you're watching them go to the bathroom because you took pictures of the signs outside it.
You must have X-ray vision. I should thank them for calling her Superwoman.
Yeah, it's gaslighting.
I try real hard, but I have not mastered it yet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just like me being in more than one location at once. I'm good at creating the illusion of it, but I have yet to actually master the ability to be in more than one place at a time. So this is what a meeting. What a meeting. We're 4 hours and 15 minutes in, so we're not going to talk much longer, but what a meeting. They passed the boys and girls sports, so at least now that's dealt with. No boys and girls sports. So we can at least
I will say this: there's some loopholes in that policy, and I'm not going to go into too much
probably.
detail right now because I know everybody wants to close. It's been a long night, like you said, but that policy is not quite what it should be now. I'm not going to be, stick in the mud because it's much better than what we had. Prior to tonight, the policy was basically no policy at all. It was according to your gender identity, which means whatever you want to call yourself, that's what you are, which of course is incredibly absurd. But so this is definitely an improvement and a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of loopholes in that policy. Now, the way some of the hesitant board members like Brian Geis-White and Adam Trone and
all had to make a big statement before they voted.
They're going to try to tweak it in the wrong direction and make it even more feckless than it is right now. So I'm really hoping that the people, the good folks on this board, the ones supporting the right cause, not if they do revisit it, which I'm actually hoping they do, if they're going to go in the right direction and make it more solidifying and make it more like the one they have in Northern and what the Independence Law Center would have them do. So
absolutely, and of course we'll continue our coverage and make sure that we cover it if they are going to make any changes to it or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Casey, did we mention it since you were on? You got shouted at.
Oh, that's 2 meetings in a row. I'm on a roll. Maybe I can
but that was crazy, especially the like they hollered at you and stuff, and I guess what was it? Brandi said
I used a slur, by referencing the word hermaphrodite, and it's interesting. When I typed my speech out earlier, if you notice in that part of it, I said intersex, aka hermaphrodite, basically making the statement they mean one and the same. The intersex is just the replacement word for it, and I did that for a reason. My wife saw me type it up earlier, Mariana, and she's like, "Are you sure you want to say it?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "I have to make a point tonight," and the point was made. I actually anticipated being gavelled on it just so I could make the point, which I did. Hey, you're talking about a medical scientific term, okay, whatever. But moving on. Now, I will, going forward, at least in school board meetings, if I reference that condition again, I'm going to use the word intersex, because at this point, the only purpose it would serve to repeat the word hermaphrodite in a school board meeting would be to trigger them having their losing their minds.
Yeah.
And then it diverts attention away from what I'm actually trying to say and the point I'm making. It's all about the word. So I will use the word intersex from here on out, but that was just to establish a precedent. One, I'm not going to just cater automatically to your redefinitions of terms, because literally at least half of deconstructing the left's false narratives is correcting the terminology, and calling out their semantic chicanery. Just like even tonight, you heard a lot of them use words like, non-binary and non-gender conforming. There's no such thing. You are what you are, whether you want to believe it or not. It's not about conforming to anything. It's about the genetic reality, which you have no choice over. So it's always about correcting their semantic chicanery in order to bring the issue back to reality. Just with the same way they will call out issues that aren't even a thing. Like tonight, how many of them talked about about including people and we shouldn't exclude. No, there's nowhere in a policy or anywhere else, any other policy, does it say these so-called transgenders aren't allowed to play sports. They're just saying, hey, if you're a guy, you're not competing against chicks. That's all. It has nothing to do with excluding anybody from anything. So
I agree with all of that. I think I can't believe, honestly, I expected more speakers from the left. I can't believe that we outnumbered them in speakers and stuff tonight. And I mean, it was really a good victory. Like you said, the policy may not be perfect, but really it was a victorious night tonight.
I told Mariana when we left, I said, I am really impressed that for once we actually had, people with sense make the majority of the speeches. I mean, usually we
Yeah.
go there, there's 5 or 6 of us and there's 100 of them. You know?
Yeah.
That's always frustrated me because I know the overall political and cultural demography of the West Shore is not like that. We're not Portland, Oregon, or Seattle,
That's why.
Washington. You know,
That's
we
why they
are
were.
at best, you know, right down the middle or even slightly to the right. And finally, we had a board meeting where the people participating in making the speeches actually reflected that. So,
And that's despite the left reaching out to other school districts for people to show up. Let's not forget that there was a huge swarm to
Was
try
there
and
a huge protest beforehand?
not that I saw. However, when we left, because we left early because this meeting was dragging on forever, there was a bunch of the Alphabet Mafia crowd gathered outside the building. And they were just basically hanging out and yucking it up and laughing and so forth. So they weren't doing anything wrong or threatening per se. But I just wonder why they were still just hanging around outside. I don't know if they were waiting for the board members to try to raise
the board members. Maybe.
You know what
I don't know. If they were, we'll find out.
Do you know what I did not see there today?
Who's that?
Channel 27.
Oh, were they supposed to be there?
Well, Danielle always has them there when something like this happens.
Interesting.
Yeah. There is some this tonight has been interesting and in a lot of different ways.
You can tell it's an election year because
but
the way
ABC,
he voted, Trone, the way he voted.
I can't wait. You guys, everybody stay tuned over the next 2 weeks of the Boiling Point podcast. You're going to see some cool videos that I'm going to put together. You want to see how quickly people change their tune? You don't think I can go back and get old video? I know how to back get old video.
And see, the left knows not only locally but nationally. They know this is a losing issue for them because thank God, at least at this point in history, knock on wood, they haven't twisted enough minds yet. You know, most people still have common sense and are willing to acknowledge reality and do not support, you know, guys competing with women in sports. Very few people, only a tiny minority, actually strongly support that lunacy. You know, and there's no possible way to even begin to intellectually, logically or morally justify it. That's why they have to constantly obfuscate the issue by talking about anything other than what the issue is really about. You know, but they know it's a loser for them. That's why they don't really want to focus too much attention on it. And I'm sure that played a big role in why what you're talking about, Brandi, why Channel 27 was not there tonight, because they were there in full force, them and other news stations, when they were supposedly catching our board members that we supported in violation of the Sunshine Act, which is now blowing up in their face because, as is always the case with the extreme left, they always falsely accuse you of the very thing they're doing. Yep. And that's a tactic they employ time and time again, and that's what's starting to come out now.
Yeah.
Like I said, he mentioned we in that. Unless he had a mouse in his pocket, he was talking about Geisweit and tyranny and, you know.
I cannot believe that.
Who was that, Brandi?
So in the text messages, Trump was talking about we can guarantee.
Oh, okay.
The president.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, unless he had a mouse in his pocket, he was talking about his other board members.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really can't believe. I mean, the amount of it was just referenced to it right at the end of that. 2 or 3 different times, 2 or 3 different parents got this. Well, guess what? We're the ones that released the information, so they saw our report, Mariana's report, and hopefully all our follow up. So,
and that's partially why they're starting to have a meltdown about this podcast, because I think it's kind of humorous because. Now, Lord willing, your podcast does continue to expand, but at this point, you know, we only reach a few hundred people, and a lot of them aren't even in the West Shore School District, and yet they have the entire media apparatus. They basically own the narratives with CBS, ABC, NBC. Penn Live, Harrisburg Patriot, you know, the York Dispatch, and yet that's not good enough. They want to make sure there's no dissenting voice in any kind of media whatsoever.
That's exactly right. That is what we provide, the dissenting opinion when it comes to that, and that's what they don't like. And I will give Adam Trone one more shout out. Thank you for being a big fan. Of course, as we know, the podcast that is now referenced repeatedly, sometimes as in this meeting, repeatedly. The podcast that's mentioned is us. So, you know, we are having a major impact on what's going on and affecting the conversation and policy at this point. So I'm glad to be a part of it. I mean, this has exceeded my expectations. This is fantastic. So the Boiling Point podcast isn't going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So we're going to be around. So everybody just better just get used to it because we ain't going nowhere. Of course, Adam Trone, you're invited on to an episode. I'd love to talk with my top
Don't hold your
fans.
breath.
Yeah. I love to talk with my top fans. So I would love to have you on. Thank you for the repeated shout outs. And it's always great to get marketing from the other side, as well as some of our other top fans. It wasn't a who's who of our number one fans tonight, but there were a few that were out at the beginning. And of course,
I know
Adam
I run
Trone.
the risk here of giving them too much helpful advice, but I saw some very skilled politician maneuver tonight, but with Brian Geisweit and with Terry Mickle. I mean, say what you want about them, they are smooth. they know how to walk a fine line and present themselves in a very balanced way that doesn't reflect at all what their true ideology and agendas are. I got to give credit where credit's due. They are slick. They are smart.
Yeah,
I asked her about her thoughts on the policy the other day because she had gone around, or somebody for her had gone around and was telling people that she was conservative.
Yes, I heard about that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I told them, go ahead. You don't even need to wipe my name out. Just use it. Right here it is.
Yeah.
And the fact that she used both of my kids in the comment, and Caden, who his is a medical issue as to why he can't even play.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with gender.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Some of the
and
stuff
not
is
surprisingly,
ridiculous.
she was sitting where she always sits tonight, and that's with that whole rainbow alphabet crowd. You know, with all the various fluorescent hair colors and tats and face piercings.
Talking about inclusion while wearing a red shirt that says "Protect Bathrooms." Yeah.
And, we even had an elf there tonight. There was a girl with a
You guys need to. When you guys go, you literally need to take like a panorama photo.
That's a good idea.
You guys are always so busy with speaking, but I've asked Mariana if she would provide us, or you, if you want to ever go. I would love to have a second camera angle in the room, not just get the camera angles that they provide us, but I'd love to be able to switch to you or Mariana's camera and show the entire gallery.
Yeah. That's an idea, because I tell you, when you see that crowd sitting there, and then with some of their speeches, I mean, it's literally like being in an SNL skit or a South Park episode. You can't even parody this.
I was going to when I was planning to come to this meeting. My initial plan, I was going to have somebody in the studio. If I was going to be on location, then I needed somebody in the studio. So the person in the studio was going to keep the feed from the website up. But then I told them, I said, you're going to keep my camera up too, because I'm going to have my camera on the gallery. So it's a public meeting. You're not anonymous. You can't, just because you're not a public official. If you go to the public meeting, you can be on the camera. It's a public meeting. It's a public venue. There is no privacy. So that's what I was planning on doing if I went, was just having a camera on the gallery the whole time. I was going to set up on the side so I could get the entire gallery. That was my whole plan with my camera, and just use the normal camera angles for the board, because they got the board, but they don't have anybody behind that. So that's where I'd love to get some camera shots behind.
And if you have nothing to hide, who cares? Because I tell you, it didn't happen tonight, but I've caught people on more than a few occasions snapping pictures of me with their phone from the other side.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying.
By all means.
We need to do that. We need to get
Next
somebody.
Next time they do that, you need to turn and be like, thanks.
Be like,
I'm telling you, you need a Boiling Point podcast shirt, and then you can just stand up and just stretch the shirt out for them and be like, here, take a picture of it. Yeah. So, all right. Well, then I think we're going to close out. It was a crazy meeting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's been so long tonight. Who did the meeting? Who chaired the meeting, Brandy?
Mandy Davis.
Mandy
Davis. Yeah.
Yes,
and it was
very good.
Speaking toward the end.
Yeah.
About
and her husband speaking. Yeah, that was
aligned.
How about that? That's what I'm saying. Like, Mandy Davis's husband had the text messages that we used on our show. Like, he had to have gotten them from our show. He had to have screenshotted them right off our podcast. So that was great. And her husband speaking. Mandy Davis chaired the hell out of tonight. She did
She
amazing
did a good
job.
job.
She kept everything in line. I love that she kicked people out of the meeting who were being disrespectful and disruptive. It's
She gavelled
always
me, so I'm a little salty about that. No,
it's always a little, you know, the left side is always where they're always going to be likely the ones that get thrown out of the meeting. It's not as likely going to be the conservative side because they're not there to make a spectacle. They're
Well,
there.
Jay Hess was he was really butthurt tonight that I wasn't thrown out of the meeting. I don't know if you could hear it on your mic there, but he was yelling, you know, he just used a slur. Why is he still here? He should be out of here. He used a slur, and he's yelling this to the security and to Mandy Davis. They wanted me to be escorted out of the meeting for using a slur.
Yeah, we heard there was some disruption there and stuff. So yeah, me and Brandi were chatting in the private chat about it.
Mariana said that someone said that you needed to kill yourself.
Well, the one guy, he yelled that to the whole crowd. He said, "Go and kill yourselves, you know, you bunch of bigots, you bunch of transphobes." And again, another one of those absurd oxymoronic.
Was that the one with the sign?
Yeah,
word salad. There's no such thing as a transphobe. I don't know about you, but I've never seen somebody see a transvestite walking down the street and run and hide behind a car. Sorry, I just never seen that.
No, it's not about fear. Yeah, it's not about fear or hate. It's about concern for their mental well-being. That's what the concern is for. And for our children. That's the other point I wanted to make. How many of the kids today, though, spoke in opposition of the policy that they voted in? There was a lot of kids that spoke against it. No kids spoke
all
for
the students that spoke against it. You know,
yeah.
I mean, they're indoctrinated because that's
how terrible is that?
School district. That's all they've been doing, especially Cedar Cliff High School. You know, there's nothing but one giant big pride parade, and that's that they are relentless in pushing those agendas. Now, ironically, I did get to speak with one of the young men who spoke. Now, I don't know if he calls himself a young man or if he identifies as, you know, I don't know what he calls himself, but I did get to briefly speak with him. Me and that other gentleman, that big guy that was giving out the statistics in sports, you know, about men's versus women. And he's actually a pleasant kid. You know, he's intelligent. He's well spoken. He's actually very polite and respectful. You know, we had a nice conversation with him. He's actually reasonable, unlike most of the left. I think he's one of the ones that there's actually hope for. You know, I think he's just confused at this point in his life. And who wouldn't be if that's what they're subjected to all the time, especially if they don't have a solid home environment where their parents are not only stable providers, but also somewhat knowledgeable to counteract some of this nonsense that they're being taught.
That kid was at least hopefully like you said, there's hope for him. He also talked about being a Christian and you know, going to church and stuff. So hopefully
he's a little confused, and hopefully he'll go the right path eventually. I mean, I know even with my kids, you know, they have a stable environment here. And, you know, I'm reasonably well versed in the issues, you know, and I'm finding myself all the time correcting the nonsense they learn in school. I mean, just recently, I mean, I could give hundreds of examples, but just recently, I'll say the most recent one, they came home and asking me if I ever heard of Joseph McCarthy. And I said, oh yeah. And then I said, let me guess, you learned that he was this rabid, paranoid guy looking for communists under every rock and ruining lives everywhere, right? So I said, yeah. I said, yeah, unfortunately, that narrative was proven wrong almost 30 years ago. Because what most people don't know, because it's not, you know, well publicized, but the public schools should have caught on after nearly 3 decades, is that in 1996, the Venona Project papers, which was a top secret military intelligence operation all throughout the Cold War that was wiretapping Soviet communications, secret Soviet communications. And they finally released, and it was, of course, a classified operation. They finally released all these documents to public record in 1996, 5 years after the Soviet Union collapsed. And among many other things, what these thousands of pages prove among the Venona Project is that Joseph McCarthy was absolutely positively 100% correct in all 57 people that he named as communist agents. They were all actually working for the Soviets as per the Soviets' wiretap communications. Not only was he right about them, he actually underestimated the problem, and there were over 600 other top government level officials in America working with the Soviets and subverting us. So he was actually, far from being this rabid guy randomly destroying lives and just accusing people, actually underestimated the problem exponentially. Now,
Yeah.
again, this was 1996. This was discovered, but till this day, every textbook, every a documentary, everything you see is going to talk about nothing but what a monster he was, even though he was fully vindicated by the release of these documents. But I went off my little tangent here because
that's all right.
One example of many how I have to correct constant ridiculous narratives that my kids are taught on a daily basis, and they don't know what to believe. So.
Yeah, that's what's terrible about it. That was also the most concerning thing to me, is the amount of kids that spoke out against the policy. I was really shocked by that too. It should be illegal. Also, it should be illegal to use your kids for political reasons. I'm sure some of those kids. I'm sure some of those kids were out on their own volition. It's not like their parents forced them to go, but they probably got their parents didn't stop the indoctrination process, and that is.
And I'll also add this too. Even if there are kids who support that policy, or who would agree with us more on other issues as well, they would be fearful of coming out because of the peer pressure. Not only is that culture in that school, very hostile toward people like us and people like them if they agree with us, but the teachers that actually support it, instead of reprimanding the bullies if these kids get mistreated, they would actually treat them as if they deserved it somehow, and even double down on it. So these kids, and you know how important social status and clout and potential ostracization is to kids of that age. I mean, they're even more susceptible to it mentally and emotionally than we are. So that kind of peer pressure is extremely powerful to high school age kids, so those who would agree with us would be unlikely to come out and speak just due to that alone. So
that is where I am grateful for my parents for making sure that I never really gave too much about what the other kids thought or whatever. They said, you are who you are, and it doesn't matter. Of course, I'd like to point out that my condition is not chosen. It's it's medically scientific. So just like why boys shouldn't compete with girls. So with that, we're going to close out this long meeting. This could be going in the record books as one of the longest, if not the longest, episode that we've done. I am going to have some fun with some of what the board members had to say. So look for that fun over the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'll be releasing that fun periodically over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we have that to look forward to. And of course, is there another meeting next Thursday?
I'm not sure. I'm be honest with you.
Hold on.
Usually there's two in a month. So, but this one's a little early, so I didn't know if they were still having a second one, if it's next week or the week after.
I don't know if they're only because there's also the primary this month. It's only it's now after midnight. It's only be 11 days away. So I don't know if that will.
The next board meeting is the 15th.
Oh, it is? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so that is next Thursday. So let's hope that one doesn't go till 10:30, and then we won't be on until till 11 or after 11, and it'll be a little bit of a shorter board meeting. But we'll stay looking for that and for the other content that we're going to release. Thank you, Brandi, for staying with me for the entire 4 hours, 38 plus minutes of this broadcast, and helping me, chatting with me and stuff, so we can keep everything going while the meeting was going on. And Casey, make sure you let Mariana know. Thank you and her for joining me after you guys got out of that crazy long meeting. You guys didn't even stay till the end, but you guys were still there for hours.
Yeah, that was that was crazy.
And I'm sure Mariana is going to have follow-up episodes, and her and Christy will be doing stuff. Brandi will likely be participating, so look for that over the next week. Marcus Frederiksen plays us in and out of every episode, as he always does. For Casey and Mariana and Brandi, I am your host, JD. And finally, that's the end.